the past decade, Sony had seemingly lost its way, struggling from one failed project to another. 10 years ago, the PlayStation 4's bright success would have been simply a single hit in a vast portfolio. Today, it's the company's sole bragging point. Weird Sony describes the company's mindset at the height of its power. The days when you could walk into a Sony store and be awed by the cutting-edge design of the company's innovative electronics, even as their insane prices took your breath away. Did the world need Abo, the interactive robotic dog? No! But it was cool, and it was a cool gimmick, as it was expensive, and helped project the image of Sony as a leader at the forefront of consumer electronic design. Owning a Sony product felt like taking possession of a shiny fragment of the future. It may be difficult to reconcile today's rag Sony with the behemoth it was in its halcyon days, but that impressive reputation had a powerful bearing on the outcome of an event that transpired 15 years ago. On September 9, 1999, Sega launched the Dreamcast console in America. Dreamcast was an instant hit in the US, yet just as quickly found itself discontinued by a meek and defeated Sega. For all the Dreamcast's excellence, it simply couldn't stand for long in the face of Sony at its weird but elegant prime. The console's demise came at the hands of Sony's PlayStation 2. A more powerful piece of hardware, yes, but not so much more powerful that it made the Dreamcast instantly obsolete. Yet to the teeming masses who lined up on day one for PS2 and whose demand kept it in short supply for nearly a year after its debut, the compact, black monolith represented the shiny fragment of the future Sony was so good at peddling. Dreamcast, on the other hand, seemed to many like the wheezing last gasp of a company that had made nothing but mistakes for half a decade. From my perspective, the Dreamcast's library revolved around replicating the arcade experience. And that's not what I look for in a gaming console, especially in an era where I couldn't play enough RPGs. Perhaps that's true, but in its short lifetime, the system still managed to give life to some role-playing greats. Like Skies of Arcadia. Designed by Phantasy Star co-creator Riko Kodama, Skies offered an upbeat, optimistic experience akin to the classic days. A wonderful counterpoint to 32-bit RPG doom and gloom. With Grandia 2, it was much more the typical RPG experience of the era, but a great one. Its dynamic battle system made each enemy encounter tense and interesting. What about Shenmue? Well, although Shenmue doesn't play much like the traditional idea of an RPG, it was very much about taking on the role and the life of protagonist Ryo Hazuki. And little surprise, it began life in the guise of a virtual fighter RPG. As far as Phantasy Star Online for the Dreamcast, the big release for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One has been Destiny. And Destiny owes a certain debt to this groundbreaking Sega RPG, Phantasy Star Online. While it had little to do with classic Phantasy Star, it introduced console gamers to the idea of cooperative gaming and persistent worlds. PlayStation 2 won the console race before it ever reached the starting blocks, claiming victory on mindshare alone. The short-lived nature of Dreamcast's existence comes down to many different factors. Its early demise was not a cut-and-dried matter, but rather the result of many events that conspired to usher the system to an early grave. While Sega soldiers on to this day, the company amounts to a mere shadow of its glory days. Once a haven for hardcore gamer fiends, hungry for alternatives to Nintendo and Sony, today Sega is all up and down. The occasional victory followed quickly by another wearing disappointment. Yet the system has its fervent supporters, some in spite of its short life, others because of it. Brendan Sinclair of Sight Games Industry is one such enthusiast. Dreamcast was the best, he gushes. It was my golden age of gaming. For a year and a half, I was treated to the most incredible, bizarre, and eclectic experiences of my gaming life. For the first time, I had disposable income to spend on whatever game interested me, to import them if need be. And with Sega getting increasingly desperate in its last days as a hardware company, it took all kinds of risks with its content. I haven't enjoyed this hobby as much before or since. I doubt I ever will again. Because the Dreamcast lifespan was so short, all of its games are from a very specific era. They have a style that feels inherently like Dreamcast. That makes it almost perfect memory capsule of turn-of-the-century gaming. I think that's part of the reason why it's so well regarded. I also think there's an element of unfulfilled potential. What would the Dreamcast have gone on to do had it had better backing from the industry at large? Indeed, what if Dreamcast had lived? What if Sega hadn't bowed out to the console race, but instead had held on to its own against Sony's weirdness? How would the company and games as a whole be different today?